So, Lianne, Rodney, thank you so much for participating in today's conversation. Honestly, so happy to have both of you here. Lianne Hannaway, you are a CPA, and she's actually the founder and the CEO of Wealthnuvo. And Wealthnuvo is a digital wealth management platform that offers ambitious women the tools to learn financial acumen, manage and grow their finances, and build their wealth. Lianne's also a board member of the Equality Fund, which is a Canadian-led international fund designed to support gender equality around the world. So she's also a co-founder of the Black Opportunity Fund as well, which is a partnership between businesses, philanthropists, foundations, and the Black community to combat the impact of systemic anti-Black racism in Canada. So Lianne, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Awesome. And then we've got Mr. Rodney Davis, a CPA CA, who's actually a managing partner at GreySuits, a Black-owned bookkeeping services firm in Toronto that offers fractional CFO services and outsourced bookkeeping services as well. He's helped build internationally recognized reputation, and he's been a sought-out public company CFO over the last 3 decades. So he's also an entrepreneur himself. In the 90s, Rodney actually was one of the original founders of Nappy's Hair Shops, which is the largest Black-owned chains of barbershops in Canada. And he was also the first CEO of the Caribbean Cultural Committee, which is better referred to as Caribana these days, and a member of a number of not-for-profit boards across the city, all while working as a CA at KPMG. He was also the first Black senior executive at Southam Newspapers, which was with the largest newspaper organization in the country. So Rodney, thank you for being here as well.
Happy to be here.
So that said, why are we here today? That's the better question, right? And obviously there's been a series of events that have happened between last year and where we are today across the world, and it's affected all of us to some degree. And this is a chance for us to reflect on these movements that bring about positive change. Let's acknowledge and celebrate awesome Black Canadians that have been doing amazing things for their communities and supporting Canadian business. As finance and accounting recruiters, we know that there are many successful Black CPAs, entrepreneurs, startup leaders that are making up the Canadian business landscape of high growth companies. And so, Clarity's commitment right now is to shine light on these Black entrepreneurs, these Black finance leaders that are creating the businesses of tomorrow. One of the things that we want to make sure that the world understands is that representation matters. And when you see someone in a role that you want to be in one day, it gives you hope. It gives you motivation. It gives you, excitement of where you could be. And so we want to make sure that we're showcasing and using our platform to recognize successful CFOs and other finance leaders across Canada. We want to bring visibility to their experiences. We want to understand what the Black experience is like, these unnecessary barriers and uphill battles that have to be fought to earn our spot at the top. And so today we're going to kind of talk about some of those things and experiences that Lianne and Rodney can share around how they can be successful in their careers. At Clarity, our mission is to improve decision-making and hiring. And in order to do that, we need to address biases in the hiring process. We're committed to being an ally throughout the careers of finance and accounting professionals across Canada. One of the questions I wanted to cover today with the two of you was the unspoken struggles of Black finance and accounting leaders. I think we've gotten so good at not spending time on the struggle. We just keep focused on where we're trying to go, and we don't really reflect on maybe what was hard about our struggle. Do you have any examples that maybe could help illustrate how real anti-Black racism is right here in Toronto, in Canada?
To just talk a little bit about that, I feel as being both Black and being a woman, as well as other identities that I have, you're always usually the first and the only, So, you spoke about a lot about representation matters, but I know over the course of my career, I had to really search long and hard for representations of Black women in senior leadership, Black women at the partnership level, that I could really tap into and understand how they were going about their struggle. But I would say for that, that unspoken or that kind of really crazy moment. I would never say that in Canada, we're very, very polite in terms of, how we treat different people. So it's never really, really overt. I find it's like some of the ways where other people will talk about being excluded or being not in the room. Some examples in my career, in public accounting, it was really about the files you got to work on and the clients you got to work with. They really helped you advance your career. And I know for at one period in my life, I was nominated to lead all the senior accountants. So, my role was to assemble the team together, disseminate new information, new methodologies, make sure that I brought any issues forward to management and senior leadership. And I really coveted that role. I was given that role because I had been singled out as being a really good performer within the firm. And an opportunity came up for the summer to go to Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley was new, it was big, it was very, very exciting. And, my manager was like, I need to talk to you about this, like this opportunity, it's coming to this firm, and I was actually really excited. I was thinking, oh, what would it be like to work in like Silicon Valley for the summer, go to California for the summer. And so when he sat me down, he said, we're sending somebody else and we need you to take over a lot of their responsibilities while they're gone. And that was kind of like, oh, I don't get it. I'm the, I'm the lead senior accountant. But, as I reflect upon it, it was more, well, we're only going to send only the males, and we're going to send people who reflect the companies that are already there to make it easier for them, make it more comfortable. That was just kind of a moment where I was like, oh, okay, well, it's not really just about performance. It could be other factors that I can't really control that can really kind of leave you out of the room. So again, like, I don't think it's never meant to be overt, it's just what are those barriers that are in place within organizations and how we look at who can be successful that could really hold people back. I know I just have other examples where I just, you've kind of been made to feel othered. This new path in my who I want to be and how I want to show up. A lot of my mentors will always say, like, whatever room you're in, be the best in the room. Like, that's the best way you can just make sure that you are being who you honestly want to be in the room. And for me, that's been me also going on like a natural hair journey and like really showing up with my hair as opposed to like straightening it, as opposed to making it look like, how I think success and professionalism should look.
Palatable is the word that I've used that word once even with my own hair, and finding a more palatable way to wear my hair.
Yeah.
I get what you mean.
Yeah, but definitely specific to Black women. Now we're showing up in room, and Black men too. I mean, we as well. But just like kind of feeling a little bit more like being, again, the first and the only to wear your hair in certain ways, whether it's braided, whether it's blown out, whether it's, natural curls or anything like that. And hearing comments like, oh, your hair kind of looked, less militant before, or it looked, more feminine the way you had it before. And just kind of like having to absorb some of those blows and not reacting, and just having the courage within yourself to like show up how you can best perform, because it's a signal to all those other people in the room. Like, I've had other Black women come up to me and say, I really love that you're doing what you're doing. And it's that kind of, we know what we're saying when we're talking to each other about how we're showing up.
The objective of today is kind of giving people a snapshot into the conversation they may not be always privy to, because they're not asking us about the Black experience, right? And Rodney, you being the Black man in the room, I mean, you and I have had lots of conversations, and I know there've been some interesting experiences you've had throughout your career. Is there anything that kind of stands out to you as, if I shared this, people would be floored?
I could probably give you a dozen examples. When I first left KPMG and went into a position, and then had a pretty swift rise. Within a year, I had 3 promotions in there. And I started out in a group of 6, and we had a pool. And in that pool, we had an assistant who was responsible for all of us in the pool. A year later, I ended up becoming the director of finance. And now that assistant reported to the director of finance. And so in essence, I came in and she now became my assistant. And what I found fascinating was when she became my assistant, as opposed to I was just one of the people in the pool, the relationship changed dramatically. Like, this was a lady who I got along with very well, had no issues with. We were very friendly and got along, cordial. I mean, there was just no issues. We was all friendly when Rodney was in the pool. When Rodney became the boss, it became really uncomfortable. And so what she did, she started not getting my work done as she was supposed to get my work done. And because she was still supporting the VP, who was the previous boss, and she would just kind of not get my work done and kind of not take it on. And so I had a major assignment coming up for all of the presidents across the country. And I was in the hall talking to her quietly, and I had another assistant. So I had 2 assistants. So they were both there, and I was like, hey, Catherine, how's that thing coming along? I've been waiting for it. And she just started yelling. Look, I'm busy. And she started carrying. I was like, whoa, take this conversation in the office, because I don't want to have this discussion outside here. And she said, no, I will not go in the office with you. And she just created a scene. And I was like, as a Black man, you see a white woman carrying on like that, you're out. That's when you realize, I'm not going to be a Black man arguing with a white woman in a corporate setting. This is not a place for Rodney. So Rodney says, listen, Catherine, I'm out. So I just kind of went into my office. And this is what was fascinating about the story. She was so emboldened, she went down to HR and told HR that I had been abusive to her. Totally fabricated. For my benefit, to my good fortune, the CFO's secretary, who, unbeknownst to me, she had witnessed this whole thing and had followed this woman into HR, waited till the woman left HR, and then went into HR and said, whatever she just told you is not true. What makes it fascinating is my boss, who was a woman, then subsequently called me. So I'm driving home at this point, and she says, you're in big trouble, Buster. Now, and she would not have that dialogue that way with a white guy in that same position. So she says, big trouble, Buster. This is, are you calling me to ask me a question, or what is it that you're calling me about? And she then says about this issue with Catherine. I said, that's not what happened. But unbeknownst to Carolyn, who was my boss, this whole thing had already played out. So by the time I got home, Carolyn called me to apologize, because by now HR had contacted her and told her that this was all an untruth, and this woman had fabricated the entire story. Now I get to work the next morning and everybody's apologizing. And this is what's fascinating, is that this woman got found out to be lying. The young girl who was right beside her when this was happening, who also worked for me, when I asked her, she didn't know that this had been disproven already. I asked her, did you see what happened? She said, I didn't see anything. She was literally beside Catherine. So she knew that this was untrue. And she was prepared to watch this Black man go down over this issue. And so then HR called me to apologize and told me that they had come to realize that Catherine had made up the story and it wasn't true and all this. And then they were like, but we don't want to let her go. We'd like her to continue working. And I just thought to myself, could you imagine if a Black woman had done that? And I'm telling you that her confidence was because she figured she could sacrifice the Black man. She would never have done that to white executives. And you have to understand, her and I had no difficulty, no tension, no bad relationship, no bad blood. This woman was willing to throw me out and ruin my entire career. The idea that you would think you could go into HR and tell that story when there wasn't 1 or 2 witnesses, there were at least 20 people in that immediate surrounding when she was carrying on. And she walked boldly into HR, confident enough that she could pull that off. So they asked me, would I keep her? I said, no, she can't work for me. So they said, well, do you mind if we reallocate her to someone else? And I said, what on earth made this happen? So the story was, she was having trouble with her husband. And I've heard this excuse every time someone gets ratted out when they do something stupid like this. She was having problems with her husband, and I reminded her of her husband. Now, I gotta tell you, I've met her husband. I don't remind her of her husband. I look nothing like this man. We have no similar disposition. It was just a simple excuse. And she didn't lose her job. And I simply said, I just don't want to see her. So wherever you put her somewhere else in the building, I'm going to tell you what to do with your company, but she can't work around me and I don't want to see her. It was clearly a black and white issue. There's no scenario where that would have happened to a white executive in the same scenario. And I was really disappointed that they didn't let her go. They thought they could ask me if it was okay for her to stick around. Because to me, and having subsequent to that been a very senior executive in large organizations, there's no way that would have gone unpunished if she had done that to a white executive. There's no.
Well, the tables were turned. I was going to say, if it was a black woman in that role, like,
but even as a white woman, if she did it to a white executive, that would not have gone unpunished.
She would have been.
Yeah, Rodney's also making me think of a scenario where I had a peer, a peer who, with the promotion, she became a part of my team as no longer my peer, where you had a good relationship as peers, but the moment you become, the boss, the relationship all of a sudden changes, and to the point where the same thing happens where, HR can, not really be really supportive in that endeavor, I've had said to me, well, what is it going to look like to everybody else if I report to you? And you're just left thinking, okay, like, am I really supposed to answer this question? Or even, your boss coming and saying, well, this person doesn't really want to report to you. So what should we do about this? Should we move her to another team? And it's like, I just couldn't imagine like that being told to a white male, so these are common occurrences. And it's often sometimes where, you've kind of heard the adage, yes, HR is like the center for culture, but it's like, what kind of culture are they promoting and how are they really trying to support, their employees?
I know, Rodney, you said you had another example, and I can only imagine it would be just as compelling. It's just, for me, one of the things, like, the word that stands out is probably disheartening, because it's like, you kind of hope for more. And then you hear stories like this and you're like, okay, Rodney's not an old dude. Like, this happened within the last, few years, let's say a couple decades. And like, that's not a long time ago. So, and these are people that people are working with every day today. It's one of those things where, aspiring CPAs or, they acknowledge that they're going to have to go up against the odds, but it's like, why? Why do we have to come and fight these unnecessary battles? And I say unnecessary because it really is. Because if it really just boils down to the color of our skin, how necessary is that? We've proven ourselves, we've earned our stripes, yet we're still here climbing this uphill, again, unnecessary battle. For what reason? Because I need to prove myself to you now, after my entire career speaks for itself.
That's like one of those areas where I always try and focus on like solutions.
Yes.
And not for the organization, but for the individual, like, really about building your own board of directors, your own like mentors, sponsors, people you can go to, and not just in the organization, but like within the CPA, within all the other CAs that within industry, so that you can be prepared to make the best decision for you, whether that's moving within that organization or moving outside of that organization, to make it really easier for you. And one of the reasons why I really am passionate about Wealthnuvo is I really think that in order to make that transition easier, if you had your own emergency fund, what, this is not working for me, this organization, it doesn't really reflect my values, and it's not really giving me a trajectory to be really, really great. And I can now take my talent somewhere else. And I have enough confidence in myself that if I had to leave tomorrow, or I'm put in a situation where I have to, be the bigger person in a scenario where if it was anybody else, the treatment would be differently, that I could be prepared to leave. And within 3-6 months, whatever that time period is, I could find something that is more suitable for me, or maybe even start looking at starting my own thing, and doing something that, I could build. And you really use the skills that I know as a finance professional to build something amazing.
It makes a lot of sense. I mean, you kind of touched a little bit on mentorship and sponsorship. And, it's funny because I read articles and I speak to people, and some of the terms, some people use them interchangeably, but they're not. They're very different things. Mentorship is one thing, sponsorship is another. And regardless, both are not as prevalent in our community, and so how has sponsorship and mentorship kind of impacted you both in your career, and how far out of your way did you have to go to find a Black mentor, or did you just give up that journey and just find a white one, or a non-Black leader that could kind of mentor you throughout your career?
Definitely think there's a difference between mentor and sponsor. I think mentor, you can find them anywhere. You can find mentors who are, above you, in terms of accomplishments, in terms of where they are. You can find mentors at the peer level, and you can find mentors for people who are just coming up. Like, I learned so much about all these different apps and all these different things from folks who are younger to me, and I would consider them a mentor, as they would consider me as mentor. We're helping each other, Sponsor is more, I think, within the organization that you're in, and they really have the ability to help your career and help position you in the right places within an organization. I often say to people that the biggest decisions about your career are going to be made about you when you're not in the room. So you're going to want to have sponsors in that room, right? Who are going to be talking about why this needs to be an opportunity for Natasha, like why this needs to be an opportunity that is next on her growth trajectory. Like I said, I've had lots of mentors who are Black, not Black, woman, not woman, Francophone, Anglophone, like all different types of mentors in accounting, not in accounting. But my biggest sponsor, he's a mentor now because we're not at the same organization, was a former partner at KPMG. He had spent some time abroad and he spoke French.
Maybe Rodney knows him, just saying. I'm kidding.
I don't think we were at KPMG at the same time though. No, this sponsor, he's Francophone, well, he's from Quebec, but he spent a lot of time in Europe, came back, was really a specialist in IFRS, and we just connected. We just had a lot of values in common, and I ended up working for him on his team, and him seeing what I could do and me helping to grow his business. Like he became like a really big sponsor, and he's still a big mentor to this day. So I don't really think it has to be doesn't have to be Black, like it,
Yeah.
100%.
That's worth saying. That's worth saying, because we sometimes we feel like we need to go seek out a Black leader, but maybe it's just leadership in general. Rodney, what's your exposure to leadership? To sponsorship and mentorship? Do you have a mentor when you were growing up?
I did not. I don't think I was.
Did not.
No, I can't say that I can point to someone in my career. That was probably something I noticed quite early on, that there weren't any. I think Lianne mentioned, like, I was often the first in the room doing that. And in the companies I worked for, I made a conscious decision to work in corporate because I wanted to set that example. People had a tendency, like, I owned nappies. I had a business when I was 22. That was a very successful business. I had also in my mind that folks would say, yeah, you did well, but in a Black-owned business or a small business, as opposed to you did well in the big pond. I chose to stay in the pond, which is why I was working full-time and running the hair shops, because I thought it was important to still be there. So no, I mean, I had a sponsor at KPMG who was my senior manager. He and I are still good friends to this day, but it wasn't a Black.
It gets me thinking, they're even just to come up with this, like even the CFO panel, like there were CFOs that I networked with and I spoke with that weren't necessarily as comfortable being as forthcoming about just being as vulnerable as you two are willing to around their experiences climbing the corporate ladder. And that might be because of the environments they're still in. the stakeholders that are still involved and how comfortable they are in their journeys and experience about sharing where they are today. But again, I appreciate the two of you just for your commitment to me in being so vulnerable about a topic that weighs heavy on us, but not in anyone else, to be honest. Like it's not their experience. They could care less, right? But for us, this is the CPA, Black CPAs in Toronto and like all across Canada want to see CFOs that look like them. And we know that, they want to know, how do I get there? And how do I align myself with the right resources, the right people, the right, mentors and sponsors to be able to set my career up for success. I know I'm great, but how to let the world know that I am, and how do I submerge myself in environments where I can be recognized for the work that I do. So do you guys have any advice to, today's aspiring CFOs that are Black? What key things do you think they could do to help accelerate themselves in their careers?
I think for me, you've got to always be true to yourself and where you come from, because there's an authenticity that shines through, and Black or not, people are going to respond to authenticity. And so I would say to any aspiring CFO, Black or otherwise, if you're authentic to who you are and to your origins and to what you believe in, it's a better way to go forward than to try to be what you think people want you to be, because that's not leadership. And if you're trying to aspire to leadership, people will identify that absence of leadership in that you try to conform as opposed to continue to be who you are. And I think that served me well, because I've had bosses promote me who, I gotta tell you, they don't love me, but they know I'm good. And they know that they're going to get good leadership. And that's because I've always been true to who I am. So I would say to anybody coming up, what's also good to see is today, 25 years later, there are a lot of good Black role models. There are a lot of good examples for a young person to look for, and they should find them, and don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call them. I've probably mentored in my career in excess of 50 or 60 people who've gone on to become either senior managers or executives where they were. Some have gone on to be presidents and run their own companies. And some of them met me just by picking up the phone and calling me, so they should never be shy about picking up the phone and calling someone who they see and they would like to kind of find them. Because had I seen those people when I was in my early 20s, I might have called them. But now you see them, which is great. So take advantage of the fact that we're more exposed.
100%. And Lianne, what about you in terms of kind of your exposure to that?
I want to echo a lot of the things that Rodney said as well too. Just, pick up the phone, reach out, and now, with social media, we can find a lot more people who are on the path to greatness and reach out to them. And that being said, I'd say that one thing we can do as all potential CFOs, all potential, whether you're Black or otherwise, is work on your personal brand. It's to what Rodney was saying too, like, what are your values? What are the things that you're interested in? Like, what are the things that people see and will resonate in you? Because it's really going to help you stand out more as a leader, and less so just because of, what you might look like. It's one thing to be really, really good at your job, like technically really, really strong. But if you want to really move up in terms of the organization, you're going to have to work on your personal brand in the organization, outside of the organization, and it should be consistent. You have to know what you stand for, but also like building those relationships and, getting access to skills that are going to help you become a CFO. For me, that it meant really volunteering, been a part of a ton of not-for-profit boards. Whether it's been boards where it was more of a doer role, but even, in the last 10, 12 years, more of a governance role. So, the finance team and the CFO, there's already existing there. So what are you bringing to the table as a part of the boardroom table to really shape the organization, help the organization build, and help it become sustainable? Those skills you're going to need to be an effective CFO at at the place where you work, right? So always look for different areas where you can gain the skills that you might not be getting in your current role, which will only serve to help you as an individual, but also help you for that next role. And like I said, like if you're doing the work, you built your personal brand, you got your personal board of directors, you're building those skills, and you're not really getting the opportunity where you are, now's the time to look hopefully at other parts of the organization. If not, look outside of the organization. Loyalty is overrated. It's really overrated. Loyalty to yourself, to your family, yes. To your values, to your community, yes. But loyalty to an employer who might not be showing you the same amount of love, it might be time to be looking somewhere else, or put the bet on yourself. I don't think it's a coincidence that both Rodney and I are entrepreneurs.
Well said. I mean, I see, in light of everything that happened last year, all these organizations that are like, D&I, that's what we want to focus on. We are committed and we want to put out statements that tell the world that we stand with the Black community. But is there anything that you've seen, between last year and last June, and now that has made you excited, made you really feel like change is gonna come? Like, has there been any moment or movement or group that's got you excited about what's to come?
Not yet. There's hope. There's a lot of visibility, and there are a lot of new initiatives that hopefully will grab legs and have some longevity. But I've been around a long time, and I'm hoping this isn't a fleeting moment.
I don't know if you guys follow CTV and some of the commentators over there, but Tyrone Edwards is over there, and he said, and I'll never forget it when he said it, he said, "My trauma is not a trend." Meaning what we're going through right now is not this fun hashtag we can all repost for fun to be relevant, right? And that kind of speaks, I think, a little bit on what you just said, Rodney. We'll see, right? It's the proof's in the pudding, as my grandmother would put it. What about you, Lianne? What are your thoughts on, what you've seen? You've been part of the Black Opportunity Fund as well. So maybe you can speak a little bit about why you participated in that.
I would say that I am hopeful more from the aspect of, there is being a lot of attention being paid on this, and now's the time to really continue to seed some of the work that organizations have been really doing, and scale and amplify the ones who have been doing really, really good work. A part of that is the Black Opportunity Fund. I come to it from just a group of Black finance professionals who get together and just kind of talk over the last couple of years, and using the opportunity of what happened with the murder of George Floyd, the murder of Breonna Taylor, Aubrey, like we can go on and on. But I think really just looking at this opportunity where there's been a lot of attention, like let's do something about it. One of the reasons why I'm happy that there's all these different organizations doing different things is that we've learned the lesson that they should be Black led. So I like what's going on with the Black Opportunity Fund. It looks like it's more about seeding Black business and Black community organizations as a way to, eliminate anti-Black racism. I also like what the Black North is doing, taking a business first approach in order to eliminate anti-Black systemic racism, looking at having more housing around, like looking at some of the different areas, housing, education, health, all these different areas. Even like the Foundation for Black Communities, what they're doing around philanthropy and how philanthropy should really doesn't really address Black needs. So I think all these organizations doing different things, and that them being Black led so that they can actually tailor what the results are coming out of it, I think it's great. I do want to see more Black women first initiatives. That's something that I think is still something that is missing. just to make sure that we're keeping conscious of also the other intersectional lens. It could be whether it's gender, whether it's disability, or any of the other factors, that we keep those in mind too, that it's all Black Lives Matter as well. I want to say that I'm hopeful, and just that really we have to use this opportunity. I honestly believe that, like, if we get more economic power within Black communities, that we just have a better chance of shaping our outcomes and having outcomes led by how we want to do things. So entrepreneurship is a big one. Just really having the agency to work for whatever corporations articulate and best follow your values, who have literally anti-Black, like who have, anti-racist organizations. Like, I think that literally should be a value within every organization. And when it doesn't exist, you really can see it. You can really see it. It's not just saying the right things, popping up things on Black History Month. It's embedded in your organization. And, and if not, I think you're missing out.
I want to wrap it up with a little bit of more of an upside. And it might be, Rodney, you've been in the game for a long time. And so have you seen, lack of a better word, improvements, over the course of your career around anti-Black racism? Or I don't know, maybe in your opinion, has it gotten worse?
I speak from the perspective of a Black guy who's been the vice president of finance of a $2 billion company, the CEO of a $600 million company, and the CEO of a $500 million company. When you get to the executive ranks at that level, that's going to take a long time to change. The anti-Black racism that you feel at that level, it's going to take a very long time to change. I remember when I was young reading the autobiography of Lewis, the fellow who used to run Beatrice Foods. He was probably the first Black executive to run a Fortune 100 company. We all know Beatrice. Well, they had a Black CEO. Lewis was his last name. And his book was really fascinating. And I read that book in my early 20s. And I would tell you that when you read about the hostility around him, simply because he was the Black CEO, when you get to that senior executive level, there are a lot of people that are just pissed off that you're there. And they don't even appreciate that you couldn't possibly have put yourself there. Okay, like you couldn't possibly have gotten an advantage over them to get into that position, and yet they're angry that you're in that position. So that part at that very senior level, I don't think that there's been enough change. I think there's been change at the bottom and change in the middle. There are opportunities at the entry level because it is much more available than even it was back then. When I joined KPMG in 1989, and I said to you, Rob and I started the same day. Well, we were 2 of 4 Black people in the Toronto office. Okay. And that's people from junior right through to partner. I'm not talking about at our level. I'm talking from junior right through the partner. There was no Black accountant who was even a manager. So at that level coming in there really are opportunities. But I'm sure Lianne can talk about, even at KPMG, to be a Black partner at KPMG, they will allow a couple, but when you get to a certain, so for example, I was a senior vice president of the company. I needed to hire a director of finance, and I need to hire a director of M&A. I hired a director of finance, white guy comes to the interview, no problem. Wanted to hire a Black director of finance, all of a sudden everybody got like, yo, Rodney, you sure you want to? So, when you go to hire a Black executive as a Black executive, people are like, their eyebrows go way up. Okay, like they don't want 2 of us in that senior executive room. So it just gets really hard, and you really see that firsthand when you get to that level, because it's hostile. Do you understand? It's not as couched as it is when you're at the lower levels. I get that they may not get you past the interview. You may have some challenges because they find some subtle reasons to kind of hold you back. When you get to that senior level, like they are hostile. Okay, and ain't no apologies for that hostility. So you gotta be, you see where I get my attitude from? I don't mess about. And that's how I got there, because I don't mess about. You know what I mean? You gotta bring that hostility to the table if you could get me out. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Doing the niceties and the the friendly guy who gets pushed around because people subtly push you around. You got to tell me you don't like black people. You understand? That's how you got to be in the executive board. So, it ain't gotten that much better is what I'll tell you. It's not at the senior most level.
And not at the senior level. You're right. And like that CEO pledge and the Black North Initiative and all that stuff, the idea is to try to get more visibility with on the leadership level with Black leaders. But there's so much work to be done. And like Lianne, Rodney, I'm so happy. Thank you so much for being part of this conversation. Honestly, the conversation, like full transparency, it doesn't really end. This is an ongoing conversation that we really never really will have the time for. But honestly, your experiences, your insights, and your motivations for the next level of CPAs coming up through the ranks, trying to earn their spot to becoming CFOs like you, the representation matters. And you just being here today is going to inspire so many CPAs. So thank you again for making the time for us. It's been lovely chatting with you, and I will chat with each of you in the coming days.
I really appreciate you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the time.